All approved?
Aye.
Aye.
General public. This committee will hear from the public on any subject. Anyone wishing to speak must sign up and will be allowed 2 minutes to speak. The committee shall not enter into any discourse with the public. There will be an opportunity to speak about specific project being considered today immediately following that project presentation. There you go. Thank you.
No general comments, I don't believe, signed up there, but I do need to read our compliance note here. Just in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meetings and agendas were posted and furnished to all news media and persons requesting notification.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple people that signed up, though.
I believe those are both for the Bradham track.
It is?
So, yes, sir. We'll do those right after that presentation.
Okay, we'll go start with Fort Pemberton.
Sorry, I'm having a delay here on the laptop.
It's okay.
So I think most of you will recall at the last GAB meeting, Matt Compton, who's here again today from City of Charleston, presented the Fort Pemberton Access Improvements Plan, which the GAB did approve. And one other condition that was a part of their grant agreement was that they present their plan for permanent protections to the subcommittee. So Matt's here to do that today.
Thank you.
Eric, is this TV not working? Screen not working right there? We'll get it going. I mean, that's good. I don't want to stop just for that.
Good morning. I'm Matt Compton. I'm with the City of Charleston's Capital Projects Group. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this morning. As Eric mentioned, I was here last month to talk about the conceptual use plan and did not speak to the permanent protections directly. So just a little bit of an orientation photo. This is a view from one of the two docks that are on the property looking back towards the Highland. I'm standing out on the floating dock in the Stono River. The property extends from the woodline on the right, pretty much to the woodline on the left, and all the way back. And the fortification earthworks are actually underneath the trees at the far back of the property. Excuse me. The property is listed on a national register, which doesn't really provide permanent protection. I mean, it sounds good and it triggers some requirements for permitting, but if people are doing things without the permits, or if the work that they're doing doesn't reach the level of the permitting requirements, then there's limited protection. And there's also a conservation easement that's on portions of the property that were established by the prior owner when they were considering a subdivision through a planned unit development on the property. And again, it's only a portion of the property, and that's held by the South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust. And it covers the earthworks primarily, along with a portion of the open lawn area. We do have the standard Greenbelt protections on the property, but there's also a fairly unusual requirement, at least for us, for a plan for pursuing permanent protections on the property, which we don't have a problem with. This is in addition to the standard restrictions that are on the property. And so one of the things that we've done is we've worked through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the National Park Service, to acquire a grant from them. And part of their requirement is putting a deed restriction on the property, which has gone through the city council process, required 3 readings. It was approved at the end of January and is in the process of being recorded at the ROD's office. And all of that's their standard language. We had to put it in there. I underlined the meat of it. We can't change it without their approval, and it goes up to the Secretary of the Interior, and it's basically just short of an act of Congress. It can be done. It's really, really hard to do. So from our perspective, we would view this as a permanent protection, and we hope that that y'all would as well. So between this requirement, the Greenbelt requirement, on top of that, the conservation easements over portions of the property, and the National Register requirements that involve SHPO and THPO, review of anything that goes on there, the property is basically locked down. And so this is the concept plan that we shared last month, and I just brought it back again more as a reference. The rendered area is the fortification, is the property. So everything that's rendered on this plan would be covered by those protections. And then just for reference, this is an overlay that shows the conservation easement that's over the property. It only affects portions of it. The area below the open lawn on the left was going to be carved up into houses. The area above the open lawn on the left was a separate parcel that had been subdivided out for a single-family home. And then the odd-shaped area that's kind of in the upper right corner is the interior of the fortification, where the existing house and garage are situated. We have shared this with the South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust, and they are reviewing it. All of our work will go through them as it affects their easement, and then all of our work will go through SHPO and THPO, who are both aware of the project. Through the LWCF, we had to do a Section 106 initial review with them. So again, we feel like we've got it locked down, and hopefully y'all will agree with that as well. So, and that's a view from the fort looking back at the river. And these really do look much better when you're looking at them on a screen just by yourself. So but we're really excited about being able to get the public out there and utilize this space. It's an awesome piece of property. Are there any questions? Thank you very much.
So the grant agreement condition didn't specifically say you all need to approve the plan, but that might be good just in case council asks about that. We'll be taking their access improvement plan and your recommendation to approve that tomorrow night at their finance committee meeting.
Do we have any motion?
Sure, I'll motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please. Ayes have it. Okay, Eric. Overview of FY23 winter applications. Can y'all hear me back there? Okay. No microphone needed.
Your mic is on.
It's on.
Yeah, you can hear.
You can hear without it?
No, you're doing fine. You're doing
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Just going to give you a quick overview for the 4 projects you'll be hearing about today from our applicants as part of the FY23 winter cycle. At next week's meeting, you'll hear about 4 more, and those will be 3 urban projects and 1 small landowner project. But these are the 4 that will be in front of you today for your consideration: 2 rural, 2 urban, total of 192 acres, and a purchase price of just over $8 million. And the total request today is about $3.5 million, and an impressive match of over $5 million, which equates to 144%, or $1.44 for every Greenbelt dollar. This is the what-if scenario breakdown. So this shows, if approved, how much funding would be left in each allocation. There's currently over $16 million available funds on hand, and the full rural request for the 23 winter cycle is about $2.9 million. If approved, that would leave over $13 million in the rural pot. City of Charleston and both their application and OSI's application for the Bradham tract will come from City of Charleston allocation. That total request is for $648,360. The city has just over $139,000 in funds on hand right now. So that if both of those were approved, it would require the city's allocation to drop down to just over $500,000 in the negative. Now, if you did approve that, there will be no more funding cycles until FY24, which starts July 1st, and then the new allocations would be implemented into each pot, and the cities would be just under $2 million if it's similar to what was allocated this year. So they would be back on top July 1st. If all urban projects, including the 3 that you'll consider next week, are approved, that total request would in fact require urban funds to borrow about $500,000 from rural. So the total urban request this cycle is more than what's available. But again, July 1st would be the new allocation, and that would bring the urban back into the positive for next year.
And so
Yes, sir.
we go negative for a couple of months, and then you would replenish that rural allocation.
That's correct. Yes, sir. Both the rural and the urban. If it's similar to this year's allocation, it'd be about $12.5 million total. All right. If no other questions, we'll move on to our first project. Mr. Salmonson, if you wanted just to remind everybody how we'll go through each of these projects.
The committee will hear the applicant's presentation. Committee may ask questions of the applicant, but shall not debate the project between the members at this time. Committee will hear from the public regarding the particular project being considered. Anyone wishing to speak must sign up. Will we have a couple? You have 2 minutes to speak. The committee shall not enter into discussion or discourse with the public. The chair will then entertain a motion from the committee regarding the project. Once a motion has been made and seconded, the committee may discuss the project. Motion options are to approve without conditions or changes, deny or deferred to a later meeting or pending additional information.
Thank you, sir. The first project we have for your consideration is Woodmere Drive. And let me get my laser pointer going here. It's located in West Ashley. This is Sam Rittenberg down here in the bottom right, Ashley River Road here, and then Ashley Hall Road kind of splits this property right through here. The request is from City of Charleston. It's a fee simple request, and that is not in the rural area. That's a typo. That's Woodmere is in the urban area. It's 58.8 acres. The request is just under $400,000, and they are offering a 410% match, which is made up of donated land. That's 103% match. So I'll turn it over now again to Matt Compton with the city, and he'll give you a presentation. Oh, I did the wrong one. I'm all over the place. All right.
All right. Good morning again, Matt Compton, City of Charleston Capital Projects. I promise this is the last time you'll have to hear from me this morning. I want to thank Eric for working with us on this one. We initially submitted this as a single parcel, and in the process of going through the county application process, we've been able to grow it to 5 parcels, and that's as a direct result of one of the requirements to send notification out to everybody within 300 feet of the property that we are considering this. And one of those property owners said, hey, we've got some land we want to give to you. So this originally was written as a 0% match, 5.4 acre parcel, and it's now a 103% match, 58.8 acre project. So it's unusual for it to get that way, but we're excited about it. We first started looking at this parcel actually back in 2007. It's located off of Ashley Hall Road, just above North Woodmere Drive, and west of Ashley Hall. And it is currently zoned SR3 and DR2F. It's in the city of Charleston. And we were looking at this for two reasons. One, it was proposed for development at the time for about 70 townhomes. And two, this area is really lacking in access. The closest park to this community, and this is a lot of apartments that were developed in the 60s and early 70s and going in some, I think the last ones were done about 40 years ago. So there's a lot of people that live in this area. And the closest park is the Mary U2 Playground, which is about a mile. And there's sidewalk that will take you down Orange Grove Road to get there. You can also go over to Lenoir Playground if you want to cross Sam Rittenberg Boulevard at the signal there. And that's about 1.2 miles. And that brings you in over by the playground building there. Or if you want to go over to Willie Gaines Playground, which is about 1.3 miles, there is not a direct way to go from North Woodmere over, like through the Geneva Lakes, Savage Road area. You have to go around. So those are the three closest park facilities to this. And the city of Charleston recently completed the One Charleston Park and Recreation Master Plan and identified this area as a strategic priority area, which gets into both park access and social needs and condition index. And so our consultants put that together and drew a big circle around this part of the community. And as I mentioned, after this project was submitted, we received a letter from the adjacent property owner, which is the Beach Company, and they have 4 parcels over there that are left over from the subdivision process that occurred out here in the 60s and 70s that resulted in the North Pine Point and South Pine Point subdivision. There's a shopping center over at the corner of Raoul Wallenberg and Ashley River. And so what we've now been able to expand this park up to basically Ivy Hall Road out to the end of the North Pine Point subdivision. So it's increased the project by 10 times. It's increased the usable highland by 4 times, increased the accessible water by 5 times, and it increased our match from 0 to 103%. So our initial application was this parcel. And I will say that I'm going to talk about this as the initial and then the rest, because the near term, all of our efforts are going to be focused on making the initial parcel accessible, because it already is accessible and it's already used, and we think we can capitalize on that and get the public out there within months of actually owning the property, because they're using it now. It's about 5.4 acres, 3.3 of developable and 2.1 including the tidal pond up in the corner. That tidal pond was originally constructed as a sewage lagoon to serve, as a temporary sewage lagoon to serve one of the adjacent subdivisions. It's my understanding it was never utilized for that because they were able to put in a pipe that got them access to the storm sewer and treatment plant. Excuse me, not storm sewer, the sanitary sewer and treatment plant. But one of the reasons that we were looking at this area is because it really doesn't need to be developed from a community flood zone perspective. It is developable, it is highland, and it is low highland. And so basically everything that's green on this map will flood. And so just to if I can go up one, there's the parcel, and all but maybe a quarter acre, if that, of the area is within the area that will flood, and it's an AE10, AE11 flood zone. The city's current flood requirements would tell you that your base flood elevation now has to be either 12 or 13. So anything that's built there is going to be over a garage that's designed to flood. And so we think that it makes better sense to utilize this as a park and preserve that floodplain. And it's got the sanitary sewer easements that run through it already. These are mown several times a year, so it's an open pathway that's about 20 to 30 feet wide that people are walking on. Every time I go out there, there's a gentleman from West Virginia named Clayton that tells me how much he loves being out there and running his dog. And it's there's lots of birds, lots of suburban wildlife that are out there, and fishermen that go out and get bait fish out of there. And supposedly there's some red drum that have not figured out how to get back out of the pond, and so they have fun catching them. So the alternative is this. This is the most recent development plan. It shows 66 townhomes. And this would be in the area where it says Waterfront Park across the front. That's where the sewage easement is currently. So that they couldn't build on that. So they would pack that in there if we were not able to turn this into a park. And this is from the marketing package for the development for the property that's out for sale now. All right, so the expanded project, I've highlighted the original parcel in green there. It's 5.41 acres. And the residual is from what was left of the predecessor to the beach company, their initial property purchase, which was, trying to make the laser pointer work. Anyway, Raoul Wallenberg Boulevard, which runs diagonally across, that was kind of the upper limit of their parcel down to about where North Woodmere Drive is. So in 1944, 100 acres was carved off, and after all the development that took place, what was left is the island and the lake that's on either side of the island. It's actually 2 parcels, and then what we're referring to as the salt marsh parcel, which is about 35 acres of natural marsh that is east of Ashley River Road. The island's about 2,900 feet long. It varies in width from 50 to 180 feet. It is developable, and it is similar to the parcel that we're looking at, low highland, but it is higher than the project area, the first project area. And so we're, again, from a perspective of can you develop it? Yes. And in fact, that's how they came up with the valuation of $410,000 for the island portion of it. Should you develop it? Today's world, we're worrying about flood stuff. We would say no. One thing I would point out: the island parcel includes a strip of highland behind the homes on the south side. So in between the lake and the homes south of the lake is a varying width piece of highland between 5 and about 20 feet wide. On the north side, we share the property line at the bank with the adjacent property owners. So just for a little bit of context, this is the last little bit of Ashley Hall Plantation, which was originally a 400-acre plantation, one of the earliest ones following European settlement. And it's in this portion. This map is from 1863, and by 1863 it had grown to 1,100 acres. And by this point, the Bull family had had it for almost 200 years. For reference, near the bottom right corner of that little red rectangle, you can see what looks like a causeway through the marsh. That is now Ashley Hall Road. And so in 1918, this is a 1918 update to a 1911 plat. By this point, it's a truck farm that the Kennedy family had and then sold and then had back again, and they would continue to have it until they started selling it off in the mid 40s. You can see where what was the marsh across the bottom of the highland on the left is labeled as old rice field. So you can see remnants of causeways that were put in there to cut it up into rice fields. And Ashley Hall Road is the old causeway down in the bottom right, kind of near I would try to use the laser. Oh, there's a laser pointer. Okay. Well, never mind. So the north arrow, the bottom of the north arrow, you can see a line that crosses it. That's the railroad that was constructed. It's now gone, and very near that's the old causeway that is now Ashley Hall Road. And this is a kind of a crude overlay that shows the 58.8 acres relative to all of that. So Ashley River Road on the bottom left, Ashley Hall Road on the right, North Woodmere, which is along the bottom property line, and what is now Raoul Wallenberg is the other black line that's slicing across there. So Ashley Hall frontage. Oh, I wanted to point out one thing. The very bottom corner down through there, you can see what looks like a little bit of highland that's not part of the parcel. So that is a little bit of native highland that was adjacent to the natural marsh, and you can kind of even see it on the 1863 map. And that's right there in that corner there. And part of that it was with the project. So this is the driveway off of Ashley Hall Road that we would use as one of the primary access points to the property. And right to the left, just to the left of that driveway, is this very nice live oak that is on the property, that's on that little bit of native highland. There is a man-made drainage channel that's right behind the sidewalk, parallel to the sidewalk, that crosses under Ashley Hall Road to get to the creek. And it wraps around that tree going back towards the lake, and you can maybe see the reflection of the water in the kind of the bottom right back through there. There's a little canal that varies in width, but it's tidal, and that's how the water gets back into the lake. On the east side of Ashley Hall Road, the only glimpse you get of the marsh is where that canal connects via a 36-inch culvert over to a creek. And from this point to the Ashley River is about a mile through a winding creek. As the crow flies, it's certainly not that far. And that creek varies in width from 15 feet at the narrowest up to probably about 25 to 30 feet. If you crawl through that vegetation, it's kind of the view. The North Pine Point subdivision is on your left. The Ashley River is beyond that. You go over those pine trees, and on your right is the various subdivisions off of Orange Grove Road. We are looking at this as certainly part of the project. This is not something that we're looking at as making public, because there's really not a feasible way to provide public access to this. We would just be taking this and adding it to the inventory of public marshlands. Going back to the west side of Ashley Hall Road, in front of where my pickup truck was parked previously, this is the gate that is across the driveway that keeps the vehicles out of there. You can see the footpath that's beaten down where folks are going back in there on a regular basis, Clayton and his neighbors. And if you go just inside, about 50 yards in, this is the tidal pool. It's built as a sewage lagoon, and again, like I said, never used as a sewage lagoon, but that box structure on the right would have been the outfall for that. This is a basin that is about 2 feet deep, maybe 2.5, at the shallowest point during low tide, and the tide moves in and out. You go a little bit further in, and this is a typical view of the sanitary sewer easement, where it's mown several times a year, enough to knock it back. And you can kind of see on the left there's some litter through there. There are portions of this path, not the whole thing, that are low enough that with a heavy rain event on a high tide, you'll get litter that washes into the ditch from upstream. A lot of the drainage coming off of Sam Rittenberg Boulevard actually makes its way this way. And then that floating litter gets deposited up in a rack line through there. So you can see the stormwater function. That's the reason I provided that, not to show that it's a littered site, but so that it is functioning as a stormwater. And this is that lake, or a portion of it, viewed about another 50 yards in. So at this point, you're 300 feet from Ashley Hall Road and about 300 feet from North Woodmere, looking towards the west. At the background, what looks like the end of the lake is actually an accreted bank. That's where the drainage that's coming off of Sam Rittenberg flows through, and so the lake actually goes for another 2,000 feet beyond that point. The island is on the right, so the tip of the island is just to the right, and the lake wraps around. So on the left, the highland that goes all the way down to that accreted bank would be the initial project area, and that's where we'll be focusing that public access. If you turn from that point and walk that 100 yards towards Woodmere Drive, you come to this. And so the property line is on the left. The structure and the back corner, that dark structure there, is near the property corner. So all of that grass would be part of the property, and then the wood line on the right certainly continues across. And this is a view from about the middle of the property, looking at some of those the apartment homes. I think these were done in the late 70s, early 80s. And this is their view. And what we want to do is keep that from looking like that, and utilize those trails in order to bring the folks that are out there that don't feel comfortable going into that space now, either because they respect private property rights or they think only teenagers and hoodlums go back in there. We want to make it an accessible space for them. The other end of the lake, this is the entrance to the South Pine Point subdivision. This would be part of the property standing at the corner of the highland. We're looking towards Raoul Wallenberg. The South Lake is just in the right-hand side over there. You can see a log laying down. That's the upper reach. And then the island the island, is isthmus is what it really is, ties in right behind the fence there. So it's about 50 to 60 feet wide at that point, leading back onto the island. This is the Raoul Wallenberg frontage looking back towards Highway 61, just to kind of give you an idea how close we are to everything that's going on. This is a view from the island looking towards Greenmore Drive, and then that's towards Montclair Street. And then this is a similar view, but this is a recreation access easement off of Greenmore that was platted in the original subdivision. And you can kind of see in the background, you see the fences on both sides. And those fences are, as near as I can tell, they're along the property line. So that highland between the fence and the lake would be technically part of the island parcel. And the space in between the fence on the left and the fence on the right has the potential for a public access, at least for the community. I haven't tracked down the deed related to that, whether it would be restricted to the residents of the subdivision or if it could be made a potential access point for the general public. But this is about the midpoint of the lake. And this is a view of the interior of the island. It varies from this is the most open to kind of a thicket along the edges. And a little bit of an aerial context that showing the lake and the initial project area. The marsh is just really, it's too big to try to get it into a picture that makes any sense. So Ivory Hall Road on the left, Greenmore Drive on the south, North Woodmere over on the right-hand side, Ashley Hall Road on the upper right corner. And so it gives you an idea of just kind of how big this is. It's about 3,200 feet by the time you get from Ivy Hall Road over to Ashley Hall Road, maybe as much as 3,500 feet. The initial access is going to be coming in off of North Woodmere and Ashley Hall Road, utilizing those existing access points. We have the potential to bring in access over here off of Ivy Hall Road, but we really want to talk to the community first because this was something that came literally as a last-minute addition. This is an established community. Homes have been there for close to 50 years, and we know that going into established communities and changing the dynamic is something that we have to do sensitively. So it could be that this island is just banked green space, but it has the potential to put a trail that runs, and you could get a mile of trail on that island, which is something that we think is important. And then I just highlighted, and I'll just do it again there, right there. That's that potential access, the platted recreation access easement that's coming in off of Greenmore. So to summarize, so we had initially asked for $386,000. That was our estimate to acquire the first one. We've increased that request to $398,360. $350,000 of that is for the property that's currently being marketed. That is it appraised at that value most recently. I will say that several years ago when the city was looking at doing a different type of development on the property, it appraised higher than that. But sometimes appraisers are hesitant to appraise something higher than an agreed upon price that's in place. The property that the beach company is donating is a $0 donation. And the rest of that, so $350,000 and then $48,000 for survey, the phase one requirements, appraisals, and closing costs. The marsh parcel we would do with a quitclaim deed, no boundary survey, because it's one of those things that we don't want to do anything with it over there. We just want to bank it, and it's probably one of those scenarios where you don't want to know if there's an encroachment that's coming across it. And so we would deal with that as we needed to. Around the lake, particularly on the south side, there are some encroachments that we know are there. The ones that are related to water access, absolutely they should stay. Ones that aren't related to water access should be considered to, if it's somebody's got a shed, we would look to either relocate that shed or if it needed to be replaced at some point in the future, ask them to bring it back onto their property. But we wouldn't be going in and telling everybody they got to clear off the property. And we're not requesting any money for site improvements. So the properties combined appraise at $760,000. There's the potential for, we've got the development plan for 66 townhomes on the initial tract. By zoning, you could get 68 homes on the island parcel. Realistically, you probably wouldn't get that much, but you could build on it. And the two lake parcels and the marsh parcel are listed as undevelopable and have an assessed value of $10 in the county system. And again, we're not asking for any development funds. We're going to utilize existing mode utility corridors. We've got Keep Charleston Beautiful lined up to work with Clayton, if I can get his phone number, to get out there and run a regular litter cleanup. And we're really excited about being able to take this piece of property that we've been looking at since the Greenbelt first came around and turning it into a public space. So I'm going to close with just some pictures of the property, give you an idea of some of the birds that we've seen out there. In the bottom right corner, you can't see the nesting Canada geese pair that on the island. That's as close as I could get. They were getting kind of mean. And, you know, so the egret and the heron up top, they're there every time I go. There's wood ducks, there's woodpeckers, there's a hawk that I haven't quite identified that flies around there all the time. A lot of neat stuff. And you get out on the property and you can't really tell that you're 100 yards from a busy road. So, any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, I got some. I just want to make sure, can you go back to a map that just shows the whole area? So when we went out there, we really just, remember we probably at some point as we were walking around on the southern edge down there, you came to a stopping point, and there were some folks who looks like they were camping there.
Yes.
That now is all, you said that's not part of the property now. With the changes, that is going to be part of yours, right?
No, sir. That's on this little, I should have pointed that out. There's a 150-foot wide property right here that's a drainage easement, and that is not part of this. And so that encampment was like right there. It may be crossing the line, but we'll address that as part of getting out there and cleaning things up. There's a drainage ditch, an open ditch that runs the center line of this road, goes out to Sam Rittenberg, and it goes into a pipe, opens up into a ditch here, and then turns. And then that little piece right there is that accreted land where it flows through. And so over time, it's built that up through there. So that 150-foot piece is owned by the folks that own these apartment complexes, and it's deeded as a drainage easement. So it would remain undeveloped. It would not be ours. We certainly would make sure it gets cleaned up.
Okay. And then another one, you had a lot of apartments right in there. And I didn't see a lot of response from did all those folks get letters?
They did. Actually, we notified the owners of the apartment complex. And the requirement is to notify the property owners. We go and notify everybody. So we send them to resident, and there's three different, actually this one, and this one all number their buildings differently. So we had to go out and check their mailboxes to figure out how we needed to address them. And then there's also some apartments over here that we notified. We got about 10 of them returned as returned to center or refused. For some reason, we couldn't get in touch with the American Legion post that's over there. But we did not receive any comments from any of the residents in the apartment complex other than Clayton. And I don't know which one of these he lives in. I mean, I'm telling you, every time I'm out there, he's out there with his dog. And he is excited because it reminds him of back home in West Virginia, and he wants to be able to come out there. He's going to go out there. He wants to help us turn it into a public space.
And then when you got the new property added in there to the southeast, I guess, were those property owners notified?
That notification is actually going out today.
Okay.
We were struggling to get it out. I'd hoped to get it out yesterday, so they have not. And that's one of the other reasons that we're really from purpose of public access, we're focusing on this piece right here. One, because it's already used, and two, because we've put that notice out. But we really want to talk to these folks. And, people are funny. I mean, one of my early projects with the city, I was building a bathroom over at James Island Recreation Complex, and the least attractive element that you can have in a park. And the guy whose property was going to back up to the back of this building was so excited. And then, 4 houses down, we had to remove a couple of trees to put in a light system. We still had 50 feet of trees in between us and the property, and the property owner was having a cow. So, it's going to vary, and we know that we're going to need to work closely with this community. Most of these folks are in the city, but not all of them. So we've got a mix of city and county residents through here. And this is, it's not funded for anything, but we want to be able to have the potential to do something in the future, and we'll do it sensitively.
Okay. Two more questions.
Yes, sir.
The marsh parcel on the top, on the other side of Ashley
Yes,
Hall
sir.
Road, which is a new piece, if you go down on that little spit of land there, that East Pine Bark Lane, looks
Yes,
like
sir.
it ends up where your property ends, do you know who owns that other part?
It's an old sewage oxidation pond. And I think you're talking about right here.
Yeah.
It was, I was looking at the tax maps not too long ago. I feel like a development group, maybe out of Mount Pleasant, purchased it. But it was an oxidation pond, again, similar to what was here. This one was done in the late 60s. This was done in 1969 to 1972 era. So there's a pump station there now, and I'm not certain what they're proposing to do with it.
Okay. And my last question is, you're right, we did notice a lot of the litter that flows into there. Is there some kind of technology or something like that y'all could work on to reduce the amount of trash that flows
I think there
into
is. We've done something similar on the bikeway where we have the Ardmore Drainage Project, and there's basically litter catchers. You put them in an area that you can access. So this is that drainage easement, which is right there, that wooded parcel there. And the ditch runs right down the middle of this road. If you were to drive down Woodmere Drive, the library is right here. It's a open channel drainage structure that runs right down the middle of it, and it picks up this shopping center, some portion of Sam Rittenberg Boulevard, and whatever falls out of people's vehicles makes it into that, and then it flows down here, and everything that floats ends up right up in there is where that litter picture was. And so we could. There are litter catchers, and we would look to put one somewhere in here where it could be accessed. We'd have to work with the property owners on that and the stormwater group, but anything we can do to minimize the litter would certainly help us keep it clean.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one typo I see here. It's like, we all know this is West Ashley, but in the project form, it says James Island. We know it's West Ashley, just.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's not your fault.
About mine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a move that we approve so we can discuss.
Let's go.
Second.
All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we were having public comments.
Okay. But I don't think we have any on this one. Thank you. So now, all in favor said aye. We approved it. Now we can discuss it.
No, it's approved.
It's approved, but,
That the motion has
Oh.
not been, we're not voting yet, we want to discuss it. Right?
oh, what was your motion? I'm sorry.
Just to approve.
Okay.
And I second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Oh, on any discussion.
Any discussion first?
I don't have any.
All right.
Now it's approved.
Well, we got to vote.
Well, all in favor? That's it.
Aye.
Perfect.
Ayes have it.
It's in your chairman's school.
And next project we have for your consideration is the Bradham Tract, which is located really close to James Island County Park. Its application was submitted by Open Space Institute Land Trust. You can see it there in red. James Island County Park is located in yellow, just to the south of it there. If approved and acquired, then they will eventually transfer that to Charleston County Parks and Rec Commission. It is a fee simple urban request from City of Charleston's funding. The request is for $250,000 for this 25-acre parcel. And they're offering a very large match of almost $4 million and over 1,500%. It's located at the end of Bradham Road and right on the front of the Stono River on James Island. And I believe we have Patrick Moore and Justin Park here from Open Space Institute to give you their presentation. Get the laser pointer for you.
Yeah.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Moore. I am a Senior Project Manager for the Open Space Institute here in Charleston. It's my pleasure to bring you the Bradham Tract, also known as the James Allen County Park Addition Tract. But before we get into the details of the tract and the transaction, I want to tell you very briefly a little bit about the Open Space Institute. We are a land trust, like the other land trusts you're familiar with, but unlike those land trusts, we do not hold conservation easements in the Southeast. We are the fee simple public land people. We buy land and we make it public. We use every local, state, and federal source of funding we can find and get the land to every appropriate local, state, and federal entity that can open it up to the public in a meaningful way. You can see all the project dots on the map here. And because we do this so much in so many places, we regularly hear from landowners who think it makes sense for their property to enter the public realm. And as all of you know, sometimes that does make sense and sometimes it doesn't make sense. And in this instance, we think it definitely does. As Eric pointed out, it's a 25-acre tract that is 2 tracks away from James Allen County Park. If you go all the way to the end of Bradham Road, that's where it starts, and it goes all the way out to the river. This is the deal structure. It's 25 acres. 8 acres of that are high ground. The price is highly discounted at $1.5 million, with the appraisal at $4.2. A slight change in the funding plan since application worthy of discussion, $250,000 from the Charleston Urban Greenbelt. And then we are asking the State Conservation Bank for $1.25 million. And they have recently let us know they've had a really competitive round of grant funding, and they're going to be able to contribute $500,000 instead of $1.25 million. So we're going to go to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They have a program called NAWCA, which is the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, for that other $750,000. So the total purchase price doesn't change. None of the match percentages change, but we're bringing in that third federal source to make up for what the state bank was not able to fund. And please let me know if I need to repeat any of that or that doesn't make sense. So when you're on the tract, much like the City of Charleston tract, it does not feel like it looks on a map. It is made up largely of ponds and forested edges, so you don't feel like you're right next to a neighborhood or in the City of Charleston. And when you get out to the river, it's just sweeping views of the Stono River in all directions. There is existing pedestrian connectivity from Murray Lassane Elementary School, and they are pouring concrete on the sidewalk that will connect the entrance of James Allen County Park to Bradham Road. So there is connectivity to the nearby relevant places today. And one thing, a point I want to make is it has independent recreational utility apart from James Allen County Park. The neighborhoods and communities around this 25-acre tract will utilize it as a park, and it will also be connected to the larger county park. James Allen County Park sees almost 1 million visitors a year, which is 5 times the visitors that Congaree National Park sees, and is right on par with Carowinds, right? So the use of James Allen County Park is just incredible. It's geographically the center of the Tri-County area, recreationally the center of the Tri-County area. I've personally raised my kids there, as I'm sure many of you have.
Before you leave that, could you show where the connection's coming over from James Island to Bradham?
Yes, let's see if I can get back to a map. See if I've got one that shows it really well.
Okay, that's all right. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So this doesn't quite get to Riverland, but so Riverland Drive is right here, and the entrance to James Allen County Park is here, and Murray Lassane is right here. So the sidewalk from Murray Lassane to Bradham exists, and the new sidewalk's coming from the county park to here. And I apologize for not having Riverland visible there. This is just to make the point of this is where the people are and are going to continue to be. This is protected lands in the area, and you can see that James Allen County Park sits in the middle of everything. So these are just some pictures of the tract. The bottom left is a drone shot. If you go to the end of Bradham Road and go straight up and look out towards the Stono, that's the view. So you can see the long pond on the right side, which is the northern side of the tract, and there's where am I? You enter the property here, and you walk all the way down here, and there are these pockets of usable high ground here and here. And then this dike trail goes all the way out to this island where there is a small crabbing dock that exists. This tree with my 12-year-old recreational tester in it is at the very end of the island. And that's, you can see the view from the end there. But we think it's a great deal. Obviously, the 1,500% match is a good statistic from a deal perspective. And we're happy to take any questions that you may have on the project or the deal structure.
Is the only connection to the county park the sidewalk?
Yes, that will be down Riverland on the sidewalk.
Okay.
In the future, who can predict what opportunities may arise for, those intervening connections? You've got Terrabrook. Here, back up a little bit. So this is Terrabrook neighborhood. And then this one tract, which is owned by an LLC. So there would be opportunity for connection should that opportunity ever present itself, but is
There's
not
no marsh possibility or.
there are wildlife and trails that connect it now, but you're trespassing.
Okay.
Yeah, you're crossing that property. Some of the most prolific trespassing I've ever seen. There's a lot of recreational use out here right now, dog walking, and the current property owner has been okay with letting folks use it in a responsible way.
Let me follow up on what that particular subject. I didn't see a lot of the neighborhood folks providing letters of support. Have you gotten anything else other? Did I miss it in the application?
Yes, and we can provide those to you. So we've gotten broad community support from the folks in Terrabrook. They've about 50 of them have written letters, and I think what happened is they sent them all to the State Conservation Bank without CCing the program. But we'll get those to you if you haven't seen them.
And we did receive, I'm going to say roughly a dozen of those directly from those folks outside of the application.
Okay. Yeah. Can you go back to the picture that shows the lake in the greenery? Yeah, right at the lower left-hand one. Where's the property line on the left side, or excuse me, the right side of the lake?
Along the edge of the pond here.
Okay.
On the edge of the pond here. And so the property, and Mr. Grant can speak specifically to the timing, but maybe 50 years ago was material was removed for a road project. So there's actually about a 10-foot escarpment on the north side or the right side in this picture that serves as is the property line and is a natural boundary for the parcel.
And then you're going to give this to Charleston County Parks. Is that the idea?
That is, yeah. We'll donate it to the Charleston County Parks and Recreation Commission, and they have written a letter of support, as has County Council and the City of Charleston City Council.
I got one. I think just one more question.
Sure.
I just want to make sure I understand the financing piece of your organization here. So you've gone out, purchased this, or worked with the owner, got it. Now you're trying to recoup the funds from Greenbelt, State Conservation Bank, and then the federal funds as well. So this is to recoup your cost.
So we currently have the property under contract to close by September, and they called us and said, if you guys can make it a park, that would be great, and if not, we're going to sell it for development. And so we have it under contract. We will close in September, and then when those federal funds arrive in the summer of 2024, we will donate it to CCPRC, if that makes sense.
Do you have good access to both sides of that long lake in the sense that, like, could there be a trail around the entire thing, or is the access all down the left side, or how does access to that lake work?
So the access will come down the left side here because the property line and the escarpment, you couldn't ADA compliant trail your way down that narrow little band of high ground. And so the road comes down here. This is a big open field that sticks out into the pond, but the pond actually goes around that corner. So the pond runs the whole length of the property and is the natural northern boundary. And then where this picture stops right here is where this picture picks up. And this is another big open area of usable high ground. But the access will come along this side, and you would probably just fence off here. And people would not access down the right side of the pond.
Sort of related to that, do you have I know it's 25 acres, but on?
Yes. So you can see this dotted line on the road. That is an existing 30-foot wide dirt road. And that about where the dotted line stops, it becomes what I call a dike trail, just an old 6-foot wide dike trail out to the island. Okay. So there's great existing day one trail network public access.
And then James Island hasn't necessarily expressed how they would potentially use it. I was like wondering about parking opportunities or anything like that.
So CCPRC would incorporate it into their James Island County Park master planning process and would, that is its own animal, and I can't say exactly what would happen. There's, intuitively, there's some high ground right here at the entrance to the property that makes perfect sense for parking for passive use. Yeah.
A motion for approval.
Second.
Well, and we have two members of the community here to speak in
Yep.
support that I would
Yes.
like
Let's
to
get that
hand it over
first.
to.
Ms. Jackson?
Patrick. Oh, I'm sorry. You can go speak right there.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good morning, subcommittee members. I appreciate just being able to support the letter of support that I did write. And I want to give credit. You're going to hear from Ms. Doris Grant, who actually has a long history with this piece of property. I'm my husband, my family, we're relatively new residents by most longstanding owners' standards. We've lived here going on 10 years, and our family has developed a grandson who was born here on James Island. So I think I'm very typical in representing the residents that populate all of James Island. I live in the city limits on the other side of Folly Road, but we are regular park users. And our grandson is learning all about, his his home base in terms of the nature and the water and all of the recreational opportunities that kids, still enjoy here, especially through the park system. So I think that's the point that most citizens would emphasize to you, that the opportunity that Open Space Institute is bringing to the public is to combine this unique track into the overall county and allow them to develop the best use plans. I personally would think that, at some point kids will be able to go out and figure out to be that close to the water that is increasingly hard to access, except for park systems like James Island County Recreation provides. You've heard how popular the park is, and I do think the exposure for the environment and the conditions that most people can only read about and not really be as close to the concerns that some of us have, been dedicated to be educated about in terms of the impact on environment that human beings are bringing to an island like James Island, who has long been a popular place to live. So I would strongly encourage you to add this to the public access system, and especially to the park system, and to really take advantage of your mission as a body that's appointed to establish the protections for a longstanding community like Bradham. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grant?
Good morning. I'm a lifetime resident of James Island, and I grew up at the corner of Riverland Drive and Bradham Road. And it's just divine intervention to me to have this property available for public access. When I was growing up, that was a area where people fished and hunt, and kids like myself rode bikes and broke hips. And so to have this available for public use is, I just could not even conceive this happening in my lifetime. I had the opportunity to walk the property a couple weeks ago and have seen the evolution of that property. I remember when trucks were dumping dirt from that property, and it was desolate and just a place for kids to get dirty. And now it has evolved in such a beautiful place. And to have it set aside for public use would just benefit the whole community. Areas in that Terrabrook as one, newer communities, when they're developed, they always have an impact on older communities with flooding and other situations, and that has happened. So to see that if this is set aside, that it diminishes that threat from the property. from the landowner, people who live there now. I'm just excited about it. I hope that this committee see the benefits of it, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Mr. Melton.
Okay, I motion for approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Next.
Next project for your consideration is Lake Margaret. This is a fee simple rural request by the Nature Conservancy of South Carolina. And if approved, they will transfer that to the U.S. Forest Service to be included in their, in the National Forest and their recreation plans. It's 156 acres. The request is for $2.5 million, and they're offering a $407,500 match, 16%. It's located right on the county line with Berkeley County off of Halfway Creek Road. And we will get their presentation queued up. Come on. So what's on your screen is not on my screen. Let me try and close that one out. All right, Katie. Oh, let me get the laser pointer ready for you too. There you go.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Katie McWilliams, and I am the Director of Land Protection for the Nature Conservancy in South Carolina. And for those of y'all that are not familiar with the Nature Conservancy, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are a land trust as well. And we are dedicated to preserving the lands and waters on which all life depend. Nature Conservancy is a global organization, but in South Carolina we have a chapter where we have about 25 staff members, and we do have an office in Mount Pleasant as well. So I'm here today with my colleague Reed Rayborn, who did the site visit, which some of you all may have been on. And then also we have our Forest Service partners here. Chris Rem is our realty specialist, and Rob Stewart is from the Francis Marion District, and he's the recreation program manager. So the Nature Conservancy has protected over 400,000 acres in South Carolina since 1969. And in particular, the Francis Marion National Forest has been an area of focus for us. We have protected over 65,000 acres in the Francis Marion. We've also had a long track record of working with Charleston County Greenbelt program, and we've over 20 successful projects totaling around 10,000 acres. We also specialize, we do conservation easement projects, but we also specialize in working with federal and state and county partners on purchasing land. We do these deals, which we call cooperative deals, where oftentimes our partner will ask us to come in and help negotiate or do the initial purchase so that it can be done in a quicker manner, and sometimes we can bring funding to the table that they may not be able to. So that is our role in this transaction with the Forest Service. So to give a little context, some of the most important things about this project are really where it sits. It is a puzzle piece within this complex, which you'll see is kind of this turquoise color of the Fairlawn properties. And some of this may ring a bell for you all. I think you've probably seen it before. And these have been mitigation projects in part supported by Boeing and other corporations that have moved on 6,000 acres. And the intent of this entire project, conservation partners and Open Space Institute, the Nature Conservancy, and many other partners have participated. As you can tell, it's very close to Mount Pleasant. It's very close to Onondaga. And being in Charleston County, it is highly desirable for development. And if this property had been developed, it would have endangered the integrity of the entire national forest system in this area. The ability for the forest to manage property, and if you have a residential development, as you can imagine, in the middle of a block of forest land, it really complicates how they're able to manage the resources. So the overall Fair Lawn project has been very successful. I think around 1,000 acres have already been donated to the Francis Marion National Forest, and the remainder are being restored, and they will all be eventually donated. So this project came up, and it was mostly upland, so it was not included in these original mitigation projects. And it has been potentially seen as a target for development. It has a lot of upland area that could have been developed too, so that is a significant feature. So the property is unique because it does have a sand mine that's being completed on it. And these are pictures from the property. Parts of it, the mining has been completed, and the lake is quite beautiful that's been left there. And the total plan is for there to be about a 65-acre lake on that property. So there'll be a significant amount of forested uplands, around 70 acres. There's about 18 acres of open land and roads, and then this 65-acre lake amenity on the property. And that is a very unusual feature for this area, to have a lake of this size, to have that opportunity for access to fresh water. So the recreational opportunities that can be provided here are hiking, bird watching, boating on the lake. And you'll note that I don't mention hunting and fishing because those rights are not included at this time, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the property as well does host a lot of species. It is very beautiful property. It has a lot of biodiversity. The open nature of the lake provides an opportunity for people to sort of experience nature, see more. So it has a nice feeling about it for recreational access. So all of these slides that I'm talking about really get at the Charleston County Greenbelt program criteria. And longleaf pine forest is one of the components identified in the Charleston County Greenbelt criteria. And the uplands on this property can support longleaf pine and the species that are associated with that habitat. We also have some bay Pocosin wetlands on the property, which also support other species that are very important for this area. And then the freshwater lake has already been shown to be beneficial for nesting and migratory birds. And we have, in this complex of lands that we're having this puzzle piece contribute to, it's really a large area of undeveloped habitat. And when you have these large forest blocks, that's where you really are able to support certain species that will not be able to exist elsewhere, such as black bear. So as discussed, it is about 40% of the tract is this large lake. And then the sand mining is really expected to complete this year. The mining permit is not with the current landowner. It's held by someone else. And they have until 2024, but they are expecting to be completed this year. And it will be left as a lake, and there are certain requirements to close out a mining permit of how you must leave the site. So the finished side, if you went on the site visit, is what we expect the entire site to look like. So we will not attempt to go back in time to 2022, but I do think that we're going to transfer this in, if awarded the funding, in late 2023, early 2024. And then we would expect to be able to have it be open to the public through the National Forest System in 2024. The communities specifically that are nearby are the town of Hugie, the Wando, Cainhoy area, Awendaw, and North Mount Pleasant. So we'll discuss a little bit more the hunting, fishing, and trapping rights. The entire Fair Lawn complex of properties that you all saw on that map About 3,000 of the 6,000 acres of fair lawn are subject to a hunting license. And it was held by a closed group of about 70 people originally. They're lifetime rights. I think that group has gone down to about 40 people at this point. And no new members can be added. So the expectation is that at some point those rights will expire with those holders of those rights. So we do understand at this point too that the right holders, those license holders, they primarily hunt and fish on other portions of the fair lawn property. We would love to approach them about securing the rights just for this tract especially, but we wanted to see the outcome of this grant process first. But we also don't want to infringe on their rights. Those are their rights. And the long-term vision for this property is that it will have fishing, hunting, and trapping that will come back to the Forest Service or the future landowner when those license rights expire. But right now they cannot be offered to the public. But you can still do a tremendous amount out there. And Eric actually asked about the potential opportunity for camping and other recreational opportunities. And the Forest Service can speak to that a little bit more, but we think there is opportunity for that. The Forest Service doesn't have an immediate plan to provide camping facilities and things like that, but there is certainly an opportunity for that on this site. So the major threat here is that development in this area is a significant threat. Developers have actually already approached this landowner and requested to purchase the property, and the plan would be to put very nice Mount Pleasant and Ondaw, and being in Charleston County, it would be highly desirable. So this is just a view of the property, and you can actually kayak and canoe around the lakes. And they are large enough that it offers a nice kayaking opportunity. And the property appraised for over $2 million. We actually had it appraised, and we're going to bring the application, and then we decided we wanted to get a second appraisal, because if we are asking for a grant of this so we got a second appraisal from a different appraiser, and the value came in similarly. So we feel very comfortable with the appraised value of $2.9 million. And the landowner has agreed to sell the property at a bargain sale to us for the $2.5 million. And the Nature Conservancy is also prepared to contribute due diligence and closing costs. I think $7,500 is probably on the low end. What would be that we would donate to the National Forest to be included into the Francis Marion's management plan and to be open to the public. And that is it. Any questions?
Yes. So it's a 156-acre parcel. 65 acres have been mined.
Correct.
So it leaves 91 acres upland left.
That's about right. But, sir, what we didn't explain is the entire parcel is actually 164 acres. 156 are in Charleston County.
Yep.
So we are not including those in their proposal to you, but they will be protected and given to the National Forest.
And these owners look like they have about 1,200, 1,500 acres out there.
Yes.
They got a bunch.
Yes.
And this is just a tract that they're already mined and want to put in a conservation easement.
Yes.
To
To sell for conservation.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
And you see those recreational opportunities kind of coexisting with folks hunting and fishing as part of their club or whatever it is, like that somehow is going to work?
So, yes, because from what we know is really their use is it's a 40-member group. Only a couple of them actually go out to these properties and use those rights, and they do not exercise them on this property. I can't promise you that they would not, but they understand that these properties like the entire Fairlawn complex has been sold. And so they are exercising those rights currently on properties that have already been sold for conservation and are waiting to be donated to the Forest Service. So that sort of hurdle has already been jumped through by previously doing this with the other Fairlawn properties.
I got a couple of questions too on
Sure.
to follow up on it. So if I go out in my kayak and I throw my fishing pole in the lake, am I violating their rights?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the Forest Service would have to post it for, no fishing. And the idea is to not enroll it in the wildlife management area for hunting until such time as those licenses expire. So it would be made clear with signage that the property is available for passive recreation and not including fishing. So bird watching and observing nature.
And I apologize, didn't look that closely at the appraisal, but did the appraisal take into consideration these rights?
Yes. Yes, it did. And this has also kind of been something that's been much discussed in the entire Fairlawn project as well, with previous projects and other appraisers as well. We have an opinion from an attorney about how these rights affect the ability to develop the property. This property could have been sold for development, can be still, and you could have houses out there, and these people would still own those hunting rights.
Right.
But obviously, they would probably not want to exercise those in that area.
When they finish up the mining operations, who's going to make sure that manage the end of that? Would that be y'all or the Fish and Wildlife? Is that?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on this, but from what I understand, the very little bit I understand about the mining process, I think that there's a part of your permit process is that someone comes and makes sure you did complete the site reclamation as you're supposed to.
Okay.
And then, of course, we would check.
And are there any funds that come from those operations that would go with the land, or
No.
Goes to the owners.
wouldn't we be the owners?
Well,
Or is that? I just don't know.
you said they're finished mining or
They're expecting to be wrapping up very soon.
that's the question.
Yes. And so their permit ends 2024, but they have said they will finish in 2023.
And maybe this is for the wildlife or the forest folks, but have they had experience of managing property where hunting and fishing rights have been in place?
Yes. So I believe the Forest Service already owns about 1,000 acres of the Fairlawn property with these exact same hunting rights on them.
Okay.
And then Rob can speak to their experience managing with other hunting rights.
One of the letters of support was from a Richard Cohen, C-O-E-N.
Yes.
It didn't say what his position was.
Yeah. So Richard is a landowner, concerned citizen who has been leading a charge in the Cooper River corridor for protection of the historic Cooper River area, which is just north of this
His
property.
family owns a big tract out there,
Okay. Right.
and he's very active out there with everyone.
And my last question, and I'm sorry, I just don't know this. We keep talking about the Fairlawn projects.
Yes.
Can you give me is that where they're getting, the corporations that are coming in here are protecting property out there from the former plantation? Is that?
So the Fairlawn property, we call it that because it was formerly part of Fairlawn, what would have been Fairlawn Plantation.
Mm-hmm.
And the properties were owned by several owners that did start selling pieces of it. And the Nature Conservancy and Open Space Institute actually worked together and had a Boeing mitigation project where we were able to purchase portions of Fairlawn, and the property was being restored, wetland restoration on the property is being done. And then the same thing has happened with other tracts of Fairlawn. And Open Space Institute can speak to that a little bit more on some of the other properties they've worked on. I think BMW is another one, or Mercedes was another mitigation project out there. And so all of those together, the goal is that with that corporate investment and that the mitigation is done, the property is restored. It's a tremendous wetland asset, these areas. And then once restored, they will all be donated to the National Forest, and a portion of them have already been donated.
Did y'all approach any other organization about funding?
So we didn't, and that is what's tricky here is with going to a federal entity, our funding sources are quite limited. And the Conservation Bank is not, we can't go to the Conservation Bank for funding for a project that will go to federal hands. And that's actually the beauty of the Greenbelt program. We're very fortunate to have this funding source in our county, because otherwise it would be quite difficult to fundraise for projects that are going to go to a federal entity.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had a question about accessibility, because I didn't
Yes.
go out there. How do you get there from 17? Or do you go up Garrett's Bridge? How do you get there?
So you can get there a number of ways, but it is off of Halfway Creek Road. So you can come from 17 up. There's probably several different ways to get there. And then you turn right off of Halfway Creek Road, and you can see the property. It will be quite accessible and visible from the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it marked, and is there a place to park and those kind of things?
So it's not marked as, open to the public or anything yet, but you can definitely tell where you are. Eric went on the site visit, and it's quite open when you drive in. You're actually driving into the middle, and you kind of see one of the lakes on the right and the other lake on the left, and you can drive around the lake systems. So you can actually get around the whole property that way.
See what it minded. Any other questions? Any motions? What? I just want public comment. Nobody speak.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
All in favor? Or do we have any discussion between us?
I don't have any.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Sorry, I got another error in my slide up top there. This has nothing to do with Fort Pemberton. This is the Betsy Carrison Nature Trail project. It is the first application, I believe, that we've received from Kiowa Island Natural Habitat Conservancy. It's located between Betsy Carrison Drive and the, not the Stono River, that would be Bohicket Creek, correct? Yeah. And it's a fee simple request in the rural area for 5.6 acres. They're requesting $359,700 and offering a 75% match of just over $269,000. And I've got Kali Farah here today with the Conservancy to give his presentation. Kali?
Yeah, we just click this here, go over.
Yep, should be able to do that, or page up or page down.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you. Thank you, Eric. My name is Kali Farah. I am the Land Preservation Specialist for the Kiowa Conservancy. I also have Mr. Lee Bundrick here as well to help answer any questions that you may have about the project. We are very excited. This is our first Greenbelt project, and we see it as a great opportunity. To give you just a little bit of background about our organization, we are an accredited land trust, a 501c3 nonprofit. We are on Kiowa Island. Historically, we worked just on Kiowa Island, and then as of our new strategic plan, to measure, manage, improve, and advocate for the ecological health of Kiowa Island and its environs, we decided that we're going to move outside of Kiowa Island as well, go beyond our gate, and look in areas such as Johns Island. We are a wildlife organization, so everything that we look for as preservation is centered around wildlife. So we know while humans may have boundaries, wildlife does not. Ultimately, all of our wildlife on Kiowa travels between Seabrook and Johns Island, vice versa. So to date, we've preserved over 2,300 acres of land. That includes 14 conservation easements, 54 owned properties. And so this just gives you like a general overview map of our protected lands. A lot of it is the marsh that surrounds Kiowa Island, along with easements of highland, some property on Johns Island, the large protected marshland above Kiowa River there. And then you see some properties down the left corner that's in Cacique. We've got some on Seabrook now as well. And so this kind of gives our geographical scope. So we took a watershed approach with this plan. So ultimately everything that happens in the surrounding watershed impacts Johns Island, Kiowa, Seabrook, and that's kind of how we look at our properties as far as prioritization. And so we're kind of starting just outside the gate along Betsy Carrison Parkway into the southern end of River Road and up Bohicket Road as well. And that's where this project property comes in. It's centered right on Betsy Carrison Parkway, started there. It's also that second parcel just connected to it. This was on our radar for some time. It is subject to development. We were looking for our first domino, our first entryway into Johns Island, and this opportunity came up on the market. It was under contract. That fell through for whatever reason, and so it came back to our plate, and we were able to put in a contract. We're under contract now for the property. Other reasons why it was so important is we have a pending conservation easement. How did you say you worked this little?
If you just use the mouse, I've got the laser pointer
Okay.
for you.
So yeah, we've got a pending conservation easement here, and then there is another conservation easement on this property below. And so what we were thinking is this is adding to contiguous preservation, is also our footstep into Johns Island. And it is great wildlife habitat for those for the wildlife traveling between Kiowa and Johns Island. And it also has some historical significance as well. The property is owned by Mr. Hayward. It is 2 undeveloped lots, close to 6 acres in property. It has, and you got Betsy Carrison Parkway here, and then Camp Care Road right there. It's got a wide variety of habitat from pines to some marshland, oaks, ruderal plants, some early successional forest in there. See, there's some interior pictures of the property itself. And so what our goal, we're all centered around wildlife for our organization. So that's what we want to hold this property in perpetuity for, is for wildlife habitat, resting, feeding, travel. But then we also saw there's an additive bonus to have it a nature trail as well. There's existing sidewalk coming along Betsy Carrison Parkway that can be used to enter into the trail itself. We'd make some minor improvements, such as boardwalks to go over the ditches that are in the property, the wetland areas, and then ultimately leading to an outdoor classroom type setting or marsh viewing bench at the end of the property that overlooks Bohicket Creek. And this is kind of a general conceptual plan of the trail itself, starting at, let's see where, this would be Betsy Carrison Parkway. You'd enter into the property, the trail would start here and loop around to the back of the property. There would be vegetative signage noting the native vegetation that's in there. Also signage to include the historical significance of the Battle of Haulover Cut that took place, and those troops of the Civil War migrated through this property. But you can see here a little bit more for what the plan would be. Some improvements would be to increase the vegetation around the buffer along the border of the property to help buffer it from its neighbors as well. And then also including some pollinator pocket gardens as well to help with our pollinator species, ultimately leading to a marsh viewing bench or outdoor classroom setting. And this is just another close-up look at those pollinator gardens that we look to include along the trail. And that is a general brief overview of our presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the project. It is a fee simple acquisition. We will hold this land in perpetuity under the Kiowa Conservancy. And with all of our properties, we do put restrictive covenants on our property, so it would never be developed, and it would be open to the public every day, 7 days a week, sunrise to sunset.
Do you have any connectivity with those other properties that are right there beside it? Or do they have similar kind of public access plans?
Yeah, so next door is a residential site that pending conservation easement. There wouldn't be any necessarily connectivity through there, but what we are working to do is try to work with, right here is Kinfolk, Hemingway, and a bakery that's a commercial site. But there is a lot of parking on the side that we would try to work with them to see if they would allow 4 cars to come in and park. If it could be some mutual benefit for those going to get coffee could come and park there, use the trail as well. Other than that, it'd be those that are using the sidewalk naturally to go onto the property. We also are looking to pursue this property here in the future, who is the same owner who has agreed to give us the first right of refusal to buy this property that we see as a great public access point for the water. And then we would include connectivity from that point there as well. But that's in the future if we were to acquire it.
So no parking at all?
No, so we saw the trail as more just an additive bonus. Like I said, we are a wildlife organization. We want to protect the property for wildlife, but it would include the nature trail, but would be accessed through the existing sidewalk along Betsy Harrison Parkway that people ride their bikes and walk.
No question. How about on your letters of support, Nancy and Ed Harrell, where do they live?
Yeah, so Nancy Harold, she lives right here. She has the pending conservation easement of about 12 acres.
Okay.
And so that would bring this whole area to roughly 18 acres. And then we have also been in communication with Kent Griffin, who I believe wrote us a letter of support. He is also interested in a conservation easement. And as I mentioned, there is a conservation easement farther down. So it's a contiguous line of preservation. We need that first domino, and this is our opportunity to do so.
How about the Hemingway restaurant? You mentioned those folks. I didn't see any kind of support from them.
No, so they've also recently undergone some change. The property is actually owned by Mason Hayward as well, and he rents out those properties. The bakery has since changed hands recently, and then also the Hemingway, there's another restaurant in that same complex there that is now closed down. Is going to be new people renting that spot. So we continue to work on communication with them to see what we can do.
I want to compliment you on your habitat assessment that was submitted. Probably the most comprehensive one I've seen. Although with all the tires that were on there, that's a big cleanup. I'd say the man-made impact's a little bit more than just moderate.
Yeah, we had our Phase 1 environmental survey team go out there yesterday to start that process. We do have it in our improvements as part of our Match 2, have all of that debris and cleaned up, which we had an estimate of about $15,000.
And maybe Eric can help with this. I noticed in your application compared to what the staff said, the difference between full access, public access, and partial. If y'all talk to...
Yeah, I think they were just a little confused on those definitions, so they did not select full public access in their application, but we realized that it was indeed full public access because it is open every day and really no limitations other than being closed during overnight. So we did include those points in our staff score, which we sent out to you all.
And if I can add too, as far as support, we did present this to the town of Kiowa Island, in which they did approve to help with funding of $75,000 of our match funding to support this project, contingent on getting awarded Greenbelt funds as well.
Do I have any motions?
No public comment.
No public comments?
Thanks.
All right.
I'll move for approval.
Okay.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Your turn. Mr. Eric?
That's the end of our presentations. You'll have 4 more projects next Wednesday, and that's going to be on March 22nd, right here at 9 a.m.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Good. Well done.
Meets 2 weeks from now.
It will be April
Here's your vacation.